So that brings us to the New Orleans Saints here at 22. They're an A- for me if you want the letter grade. Kelvin Banks Jr., you had to find a replacement along the offensive line. Ryan Ramczyk has retired. Trevor Penning didn't get his fifth-year option picked up because he's, if we're being honest, struggled during his rookie deal, and we'll see what they do there. But Kelvin Banks Jr. provides them some protection. And then Tyler Shuck is at pick 40. He was QB3 in this draft class after Cam Ward, after Jackson Dart at 25 to the Giants, and then, of course, Tyler Shuck at 40. He'll be 26 years old in the fall. We've talked about all the long comings and shortcomings to death with this quarterback class. We'll see. Love the Vernon Broughton pick out of Texas, defensive lineman there. Jonas Sanker, the safety out of Virginia, also in round 3. No one talked about him during the draft process. He is a really good football player. Also a really good football player, Danny Stutzman, linebacker out of Oklahoma. He went in round 4. That feels like real value as well. And they got running back help in round 6. I mentioned Devin Neal out of Kansas. Give him some love here. Ran, what do you think about this draft class for the Saints here, ranked 22nd on our list?
Yeah, I felt the same way, and I'm glad you mentioned the Danny Stutzman pick. I've always been a fan of his. He's a football player, man. He understands what the offense is trying to do, how the offense is trying to attack. I think he's a 3-down linebacker. I think he's going to push very early to get on the field for those guys because DeMario Davis is aging and probably entering the last year of his career, in the NFL. And playing opposite of him has been a bit of a revolving door. So imagine having a Danny Stutzman, who is really a Mike linebacker, learn under DeMario Davis for a year, then take over. I think they're well positioned for the future. And Mickey Loomis, like we've talked about a lot on the show, he always drafts a year ahead of a need, which sets them up perfectly for next year.
And he didn't, your bold prediction was that they trade up. They didn't trade up or down. They stayed put this year, right?
Yeah, they did. My bold prediction was that he was going to trade back for the first time since becoming a GM in 2007. So he's still at his number of 26 trade ups, 0 trade backs.
We are down to number 12 on our list here, working our way down to number 1. And shout out to Director Corbin, Ricky Baker, actually Kevin Hicks on the TV screen. So Kevin Hicks played at Washington State, was from L.A. We're here to answer questions that nobody asked, Ryan. So let's get to number 12 here on our list. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we're headed to the NFC South. Emeka Egbuka at 19, grand slam. We didn't spend enough time talking about Emeka Egbuka during the pre-draft process because we were in love with Ted McMillan and Matthew Golden and all the tight ends. I understand that. But you and I both have used the term professional receiver. That is Emeka Egbuka. In the second round, they get Benjamin Morrison, the cornerback out of Notre Dame. Had he been healthy, he's almost certainly a top 32 pick. So clearly they thought enough of him medical-wise to take him in round 2. Round 3, another cornerback, Jacob Parrish, undersized but incredibly physical. And I'll mention one last name here, round 7, Tez Johnson, only 155 pounds. He didn't run particularly well in terms of the time speed and the 4.5s, but no one could cover him at the Senior Bowl. No one could cover him over the course of the season for Oregon. I absolutely love this pick at 235 in this draft.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really good pick for him. But I want to go back to Emeka Egbuka. And we started hearing late that if a certain receiver was there for them, that they would take a receiver because we had mocked, because just looking at their situation, an outside backer or potentially an inside backer for him. But we started hearing late that receiver was very much in play for them there. And what a perfect fit for them, especially with Chris Godwin coming off of a dislocated ankle, and he will fill a very, very similar type role for them because all that is required of Chris Godwin within the offense. And we've talked about it, at odds length. So I think that was an absolute great pick for him. And then to get Benjamin Morris in the second round, a guy that would have been in contention for being in the first round had he been healthy, it just feels like a Todd Bowles type of corner that's going to be big and physical and is going to be able to help you in run support. And putting that guy opposite of Jamel Dean, like you're going to be, those receivers in the NFC South are going to be in boxing matches out there on the edge.
It's funny you mentioned that because we're going next to the Carolina Panthers at number 11 on our list, another team that I gave an A to. And Dave Canales, Dan Morgan, they prepared for the boxing match because at 8th overall, they took Ted McMillan. The last year was Xavier Legette in the first round. This year is Ted McMillan. And then on the defensive side of the ball, where they needed to get better at edge rush and younger, Nick Scorton in round 2 out of Texas A&M, then Princely Umanmielen, who feels more like a designated pass rusher right now, but we'll see. He has all the tools you want for a successful career as an edge rusher. Took him out of Ole Miss in the 3rd round. Got Latham Ransom, the safety. I'll mention his name. Fantastic player in the back end for Ohio State. And then they got more juice at the end of the draft. Mitchell Evans, the inline tight end, to go with JT Sanders, who they drafted out of Texas last year, more of an F player at tight end position. And then finally they wrap things up with Jimmy Horton Jr., another undersized, juiced-up slot receiver who came by way of Colorado.
For me, you talk about when you say John Schneider usually zigs where everyone else would zag. To me, this pick of Tet McMillan, or excuse me, T-Mac, I don't want to disrespect him and call him Tet. He doesn't like to be called Tet. But for Tet Aurora to go here at 8, which the entire world, us included, had Jalen Walker here slotted in the entire time, they had this pick queued up for themselves and no one probably saw it coming. And so I like this pick for him to give Bryce Young another weapon, a big down the field weapon that he can throw and give a chance in those contested areas. And so I really like this pick. And then to go back-to-back edge rushers, for these guys at a time when you have an aging Jadeveon Clowney who's on the end of the last year of his deal, and then you have DJ Wanham who's also on the last year of his deal. So you have two guys that can come in and that can sit and play in a rotation early, but then will eventually be your guys moving forward. So I like what they did there with these first 3 picks.
Man, this team feels like it's turned the corner, and if Bryce Young can continue to put it together, they might be a fun watch in that division that could be wide open. Tampa Bay always wins it, and we don't give them enough credit, but it feels like they're closing the gap, the Panthers are. All right. Well, I'm going to keep that A+ then. Next up, another A+ for me. Again, another team that actually traded a first-round pick, a future first-rounder, to get back into this draft class. The Atlanta Falcons, they're number 4 on our list. Jalen Walker at 15, he just fell in their lap. They didn't have a choice. He's going to drive his car to the facility because he played at Georgia the last few years. And then at pick 26, James Pierce Jr., who was probably a top 10 talent, but some off-field concerns. Some teams had him off the board. He made a ton of 30 visits, and the Falcons thought enough of him to take him at 26. They probably would have taken him at 15 had Jalen Walker not been there. And you might say, well, why give up all that draft capital? Well, if he's a first-round pick this year and you love what you had in him and you were going to take him at 15, then you will hear nothing from me about that. And then finally, Xavier Watts. They only had 5 picks. They used them all. Xavier Watts, the safety out of Notre Dame. Ball hawk, 13 interceptions the last 2 years, former wide receiver. I love what they did, those first 3 picks. Forget everything else. They're finally going to try to make this defense a Raheem Morris defense, it feels like, Rand.
Absolutely. And this would have been top 5, top 3 for me as well, A+. And we're not going to just stop at those first 3 picks because you're leaving off my man, badass Billy Bowman. And after they took him, I texted Raheem in all caps, badass Billy Bowman. And he responded back, dog. Enough said. I'm all on board.
Love to see it. Love to see it. After taking skill position player after skill position player after skill position player in the recent drafts at the top of the draft for the Atlanta Falcons, they're going defense. They're going all in on fixing that unit. And I love what they've done so far.